Do you sometimes feel like you are dragging children, metaphorically, of course, from one thing to the next? Like you are talking, but no one is listening. Even those children that might be sitting very still and quietly. Have you ever spent hours setting up perfect provocations only to have the children engage with it for maybe a few seconds before moving on, ignore it altogether, or dismantle it to create something new? I am Nicole Fravel, and this is Wild with Teaching. And if any of the situations that I just mentioned sound familiar to you, keep listening because I'm going to cover the common mistakes that we preschool teachers sometimes make when it comes to lesson planning. And when I talk about lesson planning, I mean both the things that you are doing as a group with the children and those things that you are setting up in centers or as provocations, invitations, whatever you call them and consider them in your program. Um, so the common mistakes that we sometimes make when we are lesson planning and how connecting with a nature-based teaching methods could be the fix that you need. So mistake number one, you are talking too much. So we teachers feel like we need to teach. We are the teachers. Our job is to impart information on those little brains. So we plan these detailed, goal-oriented lessons that we want to direct children through step by step. And this practice is reinforced by parents, administrators, state standards that ask, what are you teaching? And then this unfortunately leads to call and response type of lessons where the teacher asks a question and the children give an answer that's either right or wrong, and we move on to the next thing. But I love this quote from John Hattie, who is a professor laureate at the University of Melbourne, who researches talk in the classroom. And he says, if you're talking all the time, how can you hear the impact of your teaching? And in fact, a recent study, a nationwide study in the United States of preschool talk in the classroom that was done through the University of North Carolina found that preschoolers spend only 25% of their day in meaningful conversation with either adults or peers. And by meaningful conversations, what the researchers mean are ones where children are able to share their thinking, engage in planning, share their feelings. So you want to think about, open-ended questions that lead to discussions rather than a right or wrong call and response. But only 25% of their day is spent in this type of communication. And this statistic is alarming because the one doing the talking is the one doing the learning. Research backs the importance of oral language development as the backbone of developing literacy skills. Children need to listen to language. They need to practice complex vocabulary, grammar, sentence structure before they can be ready to read it. It's also highly motivating when you get to talk, when you have real input into how the group is thinking and planning, and when people listen to what you have to say. Retention improves when you talk about what you're learning. And so the beauty of nature-based emergent learning, especially when it's outside, is that the pace is slower. Children have lots of opportunities to engage in collaborative discussions. that they're just built into the rhythm of the day, right? Where we are encouraging children to observe the world around them and the things that they are noticing and to talk about it. And so I found that some of my best group lessons are the ones that are more freeform, that allow for a lot of observations from the children, a lot of input. So, for example, one year, somebody brought in a nest, and all they did was set it up, in the middle of our group, and ask the children, what do you notice? And by looking at the nest close up, the children were able to notice that it wasn't all brown. And there were some green leaves in it. There were some white pieces of moss and lichen in the nest. It wasn't all even soft. There were some sticks. There were actually some blackberry brambles, right? And just kind of talking about what the purpose of these items were. Why did the birds choose these particular items? And then, what else do you see? We see dirt. And then some children just gradually got out paper and pencil. And I said, do you want to draw what you see so we can remember it? And actually everybody ended up getting out paper and pencil, but there was this little guy who he got out the paper and pencil because everybody else was doing it. But he put, like one green line across his paper, decided he was done, went off on his own to start digging in the dirt. He clearly wasn't interested into the nest, right? No, wrong. So he went off on his own and started to attempt to build a nest. So he was gathering up the dirt, he was gathering up the leaves, he was gathering up some twigs. But what he found was that he couldn't get his things to stick together. And so we kind of talked about that. What's going to make the mud stick? And somebody came up with the idea, it wasn't me, of mud, right? You got to get it wet. You have to get it wet somehow. And this then led to a number of the other children taking their turns, not as a group, but as an individual thing that they were doing, of creating the nests. And we got it to work. They got their nest to stick together. Of course, a couple days later, this nest started to fall apart, right? What happened? Well, the dirt became dry. So we've got these science things that are built into just going with the flow and letting children have their ideas, which then led to a number of other investigations. We started reading books. Well, birds can't pour water on their nests, so how do they figure it out? Also led to me then putting into some provocations about nest building. So nest building with Play-Doh and your natural items, nest building in strawberry baskets and your natural items, just gluing natural items onto paper and building houses. We brought out the doll house and the doll furniture to think about building in as what humans do. And so all of these things, these provocations, came from the children's ideas, which left them more engaged, not just in our group time, but in the things that were out for them to investigate. All right, mistake number 2, you stick to the script no matter what, right? Those provocations are out there, or those centers that we've set up, and this is what we want children to do. And so when we go into it, we say, this is what this center is, right? That's not how we're using the materials right now. And too often we do this as well in a planned lesson, just because it's what we had planned to do. And we thought about this ahead of time. We've been there, right? We planned something that we think is going to be really interesting for the children and exciting, but when we bring it to them, it's a flop. Parent gave me this example of how she saw on Pinterest or on the internet somewhere where a parent put a toilet paper tube on a string, tied the strings to two different chairs, right? So that, and then their child was supposed to, push the toilet paper tube back and forth on the string. And she thought this was great. She set it up. Her kid batted it once and then was more interested in taking the tube apart, right? All of her work, right? But parent and I talked about it, right? If it's not working because the children aren't interested, because they are fidgeting, because you're having an off day, because they're interested in something else, right? Both teachers and children are human. We can't predict how things are going to happen, right? It's not a factory where everything happens according to the assembly line, right? So there's no point in her, saying, no, don't take that toilet paper tube apart. Let's, keep pushing it, right? Quite literally pushing through to the end because her toddler is 1.5 years. Maybe he was working on some fine motor skills through that. Maybe it just wasn't interesting. Maybe she could work with her toddler to set it up, right? What can you attach to the toilet paper tubes that make it more interesting? Could the toddler find natural items to attach to that tube that hang from it? Can we think about sounds that it's making, right? So, and some of that is tying into what are the children paying attention to at this moment and what is interesting for them, right? Because sometimes pushing through is just an exercise in frustration for everybody. If you think about it as a group activity at your classroom, if you're dragging children through it, pulling teeth, are they really getting anything out of it? Even if you finish it, are they learning letters at that point? Are they learning how to count at that point? Probably not, because we're all stuck in the emotional thing and they weren't interested in it. So it's going over their heads. So another example is one where my reading of a story that I was doing to the whole group was interrupted by this fabulous storm of helicopter seeds from maple trees. Wind kicked up. And at first I tried to push on, right? And I was like, okay, helicopter seeds, but we're going to keep reading. But really the helicopter seeds were more interesting. So the second, third time it happened, I said, you know what? The book will be there, right? We can always come back to the book if it's serving a purpose later. Let's put the book aside and let's first of all lean into the wonder. This is fabulous. This is beautiful. This is wonderful, where we're looking at the maple seeds flying down. So some of the children started trying to catch them, right? And so we had to track the trajectory. So we're learning physics about, well, if the wind blows, right, where is it blowing the seeds to, right? And then some of the children started doing a social emotional self-regulation, right? Because they said, wait, I can listen to the wind as it comes along so I can get prepared for the gust. So we started practicing being very still and listening to the wind and then running when we hear the wind. And then when it stops, getting still again, getting control over our bodies. And then the children started looking at where is it coming from? So we started looking very closely at the maple tree and noticing these clusters of helicopter seeds on the maple tree, right? And so then days and days, within that week, as the days went by, we started talking about why do the helicopter seeds want to blow? What's happening when they hit the soil? So we're talking about how seeds germinate, right? We started talking about different ways that seeds could travel and noticing seeds that maybe got stuck on our clothing as we're walking through the forest. So leaning into that distraction, as it were, giving up what we had planned actually led to a whole lot of learning for the children. And so here's what I'm going to say. If your environment is not providing these type of teachable moments, these types of valuable distractions, then you need to change your environment, either by moving outside or bringing some of those natural elements into your classroom. All right, mistake number 3, you plan something according to your interests or the schools or the programs or state standards. We all have those standard preschool themes, right? We do apples and leaves in the fall. We make some sort of hand parent craft in December as a holiday gift. We do community helpers and we do transportation, right? These are the things that we've always done, right? Because it's October and this is what we do in October in preschool, or because it's what we've always done, or it's what is expected of us, right? I just listened recently again to Lisa Murphy speak. It is always good to listen to her speak because I was reminded of the word that she uses for these type of activities, craptivities, right? The things that we have children do that have no relevance to them. And she points out that when we do this, we are telling children that their ideas, their work, their effort isn't good enough. Right? If we want to build confidence, if we want to encourage risk taking, if we want to nurture observant children who end up taking problem solving initiative, then we need to be willing to listen to their ideas and build on their interests. And again, this is where emergent nature-based curriculum can serve us well. Right? When we are outside, children are seeing nature changing. So for many years, when I was in a traditional indoor preschool program, we taught the seasons. It's again one of those things that you teach in preschool. But I remember when I was in California, in Northern California, my co-teacher and I talking about like why are we doing this? We don't even have 4 seasons. We got dry, we got rain. We got 2 seasons here. Why are we teaching the children 4 seasons when they have no connection to it? But I have to say now that I'm outside and children are really observing it and experiencing it firsthand, the seasons, we are watching those leaves fall off the tree, right? We are seeing the buds grow in the spring. And so we have a natural connection to the passage of time, the changing of the seasons, and it makes sense to talk about the seasons. It's not an abstract concept anymore. It's something that's relevant to the children's lives, and we're talking about it only because it is relevant to their lives. And now that we're outside, the children do grasp the 4 seasons. So remember our mistakes, right? You're talking too much, right? Your lessons you're pushing through things just to push through them and finish them. And your lessons have no relevancy to the children. And so I recommend replacing these mistakes with emergent nature-based curriculum. And so if you are new to emergent nature-based curriculum, I am going to encourage you to join us on December 3rd for a free webinar when I will give you a start, right? One beginning routine that you can latch on to that helps you move your lesson forward according to what the children are giving you, responding to their needs. Now, if you've been in the emergent nature-based curriculum world for a while, a webinar will also be helpful for you because you will get something new, right? Something new that you can add to your repertoire. So I encourage you, there will be a sign up right above my head and attached to the video to sign up for the webinar. And then also join us here next week when I will be doing a roundup of some of my favorite nature-based poetry anthologies to use with preschoolers. I will see you then.